This is the OFN Today on the Ourlads Football Network as we talk Miami Dolphins football with Alan Poupar, publisher of All Dolphins for Sports Illustrated and 30-year editor for Dolphins Digest. Alan, good to have you talk Dolphins football with us again.
How are you doing, Greg?
Doing all right. So how's things going down in South Florida? How have been the practices? It's Florida's been a tricky state when it comes to COVID this I don't even know what you call it. I guess this summer.
Yeah, but now the Dolphins are back and they have nobody on the list anymore after Xavier Howard was the last one who came off it, which obviously is very good news. So they took a lot of precautions to make sure they handled the situation as well as possibly they could. And all in all, actually, it's worked out pretty well from that standpoint. As far as practice, it's training camp is training camp. Obviously, the outside circumstances in terms of no fans being allowed at the facility, the media just socially distancing in the stands, very unique. But once you get to the stuff on the field, there's another summer of practices.
Okay. Well, we talked a couple of times around the draft, and a lot of our discussion, obviously, around not just the draft, but the free agents. A ton of key players brought in free agency. Dolphins had 228 total transactions in 2019, 62% more than the league average of 142, and it hasn't stopped. And I don't anticipate it's going to stop for the next few years until they feel like they have their core players in place. So there's still a ways to go with that. But boy, you got to know your football. You have to know these guys because they're coming and they're going. And I guess it must be fun in a way.
It is, but I mean, they keep churning the bottom of that roster like every week. They pick up guys, man. It's like you said, it's never ending. And I actually thought it was going to slow down a little bit this year because their overall depth is so much better than it was last summer after they got rid of so many high-profile players. But they just haven't stopped. And one thing I've noticed this summer is they're bringing back a lot of guys who were with them. The last one being a wide receiver by the name of Andy Jones, who they had on the practice squad last year, who they re-signed to a future contract in January, who they released in April, and now they're bringing him back. And I believe to my last count, I think it's 4 players that they've re-signed in July and August who they had previously let go in 2020.
Now, speaking of receiver, 2 opt-outs, Hearns and Wilson, both slot guys. Does that open it up for Isaiah Ford? Is it by default? Or is that something that the Dolphins feel comfortable with? And tell me a little bit about this Gary Jennings as well. We know Parker, we know Preston Williams, but yeah, Ford, big open opportunity for him, right? And Gary Jennings didn't seem to make it with Seattle last year. They gave up on him pretty quick.
And if you were to ask me for a prediction right now, I would tell you that Gary Jennings is not going to make it in Miami this summer either. I mean, the truth is he just hasn't done a whole lot. I mean, I saw most of their practices that were open to the media, and the guy did very, very little to make himself stand out. So I would think, again, the guy was a 4th-round pick last year. And as you said, Seattle gave up on him fairly quickly, which makes you think that they saw some things that they didn't like. Never got a chance in Miami because he got hurt on the first kickoff that he covered in his first game with the Dolphins. But this summer, he just hasn't shown a whole lot. So my expectation is they're gone. Isaiah Ford, on the other hand, has been quite the opposite. Here's a 7th rounder from 2017 who had to wait and wait and wait. Finally, in the final weeks of the 2019 season last year, got his chance and performed very well. And this summer, he's actually been very, very good in practice. And he clearly stands out as the 3rd best wide receiver on this team right now behind Devontae Parker and Preston Williams.
Okay.
Now, having said that, Isaiah Ford is not a high-profile guy. So who's to say the Dolphins are going to go look for somebody else at some point? But right now, he's the 3rd best wide receiver on this roster.
Okay. And then anything with some of their, like Kirk Merritt, he was an interesting undrafted free agent. Or is there any other players besides, Mac Hollins is there, Jakeem Grant is there. Does Merritt have a chance to make the team?
Well, Merritt's been out for, I want to say, 4 or 5 days now with some sort of injury. We don't know the exact
Oh,
nature.
that's yeah, okay.
So that doesn't help his
No.
chances. And the truth is, before that, he didn't do a whole lot to stand out. And the same goes for the other rookie free agent they had, who was Matt Cole from McKendree University, a Division II school near Chicago. Neither of those guys, they were the opportunities to be had there, but neither of them really stood out. They do have Mac Hollins. He's another guy. He's another guy.
He's just
He's
another
another
guy,
guy.
yeah. He's a veteran, so I guess he gets, they rely on him,
Yeah,
I guess, a little bit more than the younger kids. But yeah, what you're saying is there's a serious chance that at least one, maybe even two more receivers that are not even there might be on the active roster, even though it's only 13 days away or 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks away.
yeah, no question. And then two guys I should mention is you talked about Jakeem Grant. The thing with Jakeem Grant, he's never been able to really gain solid footing as a wide receiver, and he keeps talking about it every
Yeah.
summer, and it's the same old story. But he's got value as a returner, so does that get him a roster spot? Who knows? And then you have Malcolm Perry, who's listed on the roster as a running back, but who's basically has played slot receiver uh, throughout the practices.
Okay.
So and based on what he's shown, he's pretty solidly going to make the roster. So if you count him as a wide receiver, then that gives you Parker, Williams, Ford, Perry, and then maybe Grant because of his return ability. But again, it's not as if the Dolphins couldn't use an upgrade over there.
Was that going to be? I mean, was that more of, hey, we have some openings at receiver, so let's give Perry a chance to win that spot, or was that always the design that they brought him in to be more of a receiver than a running back?
Well, to be very honest with you, the second they drafted him and they listed him as a running back, I'm sorry, it was really. I mean, you look at his size. He was an option quarterback at Navy. Does not have the
No.
size to play running back in the NFL at all. So that was always kind of curious as to why they would list him as a running back, but they did. And the assumption all along pretty much was going to be he's going to wind up playing a slot receiver and maybe be used as a gadget type of player because he can do again a lot of different things on offense.
Okay. All right. Running back. Now, they seem to be pretty good there with Howard and Breda and the whole Balaj thing. That's they're just going to cut him. Have they cut him yet?
They have not. They traded him to the Jets, or had agreed to trade with the Jets for a conditional seventh round pick, which basically tells you his value because they were going to release him, but now he failed his physical, so now he's back with them. He's still technically on the roster, but he's not there for long.
Okay. And who is the number one running back off the bench when you get past Howard and Breda?
Right now, I would look for Miles Gaskin to be that guy, the seventh round pick from 2019 from the University of
Okay.
Washington. Didn't get a whole lot of playing time last year. Got a few carries down the stretch, and in the same game where he scored his first NFL touchdown, which was Week 16 against Cincinnati, he sustained an injury that put him on IR. And this summer, he's looked like a different guy. I mean, much more quickness, decisiveness to the hole, and he's looked very impressive from my spot in the stands watching practice. He's looked just as good as Breda, to be honest.
Okay, so that's good news there. Tight ends, they acquired Shaheen. It's really about the 2018 picks, especially Jazeki. Uh, where is his ceiling? Has he come close to reaching that yet?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, because but he came such a big way from what was really a, for lack of a better word, a poor rookie season
Yeah.
to last year where he was really a major factor down the stretch. The guy had 5 touchdown catches the last 6 games, and now he comes in. And there's a lot of question as well. How much does Chan Gailey want to use the tight end? And you look at his past history. A lot of times there haven't been a lot of targets for the tight ends, but those, if you look at the roster on those teams, well, they didn't have a very good receiving tight end. Mike Gesicki is that.
Yeah.
He's a very good receiving tight end. The issue with him, a lot of his rookie season, it was getting off the line of scrimmage and getting open. That was a problem. Got a lot better at it late last year. How he picks up from that in 2020, that remains to be seen. I will say, you mentioned Shaheen. He has looked very good in practice. I would highly suspect that he's going to be the third tight end on the roster, along with Gesicki and Durham Smythe.
Okay. quarterback and offensive line. We'll go with quarterback first. So Fitzpatrick, he's been out. He's got the personal matters to contend with, and everybody understands that. Um, when we talked around draft time, obviously the Tua deal was such a big thing for the fans in the organization. With his injury, there was the expectation that they would move him along slowly. They've got their veteran quarterback there who played pretty well last year. Is that still the plan?
Absolutely. And Fitzpatrick was back at practice on Monday.
Okay.
Just to deal with that issue first of all. So he's all set to go. He absolutely will be the starter on opening day, September 13th, against New England. You mentioned Tua is not so much an issue of taking it slowly with him from a physical standpoint, because if you didn't know he had a major hip injury last November, it'd be hard to tell by the way he moved around the pocket and even scrambled. But you look at him in practice, and you clearly you see that this is a kid who needs some development before he actually should be put in the starting lineup for an NFL regular season game. So how long that's going to take, when he winds up in the starting lineup, who knows? But the expectation should be that it's going to be Fitzpatrick for at least the first several weeks of the regular season.
If something were to happen to Fitzpatrick in week 1 and week 2 comes in, does Josh Rosen start or does Tua start?
That's a very, very good question. My guess would be it would be Tua. I can tell you the head coach, Brian Flores, said Saturday that there was still a competition going on as far as that was concerned.
Okay.
My expectation would be that it would be Tua, but I don't know that it's set in stone. And I would also tell you that I don't know that he's clearly outplayed Rosen in practice. Those two have been okay and clearly a notch below Ryan Fitzpatrick in the way they move the offense.
Well, that probably doesn't say much then for Josh Rosen, because he's been in the NFL now for a few years. Definitely should be ahead of Tua at this point. I understand the talent of Tua. I completely get it. And he's a better quarterback than Rosen. And I'm not saying anything other than Rosen. You would hope, if you're a Rosen backer, you would hope that, come on. I mean, we're not even week 1 or 2 his rookie year, and you're already behind him or supposedly head to head. So it doesn't say much from my point of view to Rosen.
Well, the thing with Rosen has always been the same, because if you look at those two guys in practice, Rosen's the one who stands out physically, even among the 3 quarterbacks.
Okay.
He's the one who's got the best size. He's got the biggest arm. The problem with Rosen is the decision-making quickness in the pocket is still not there. It looks like it's a little bit better than it was last year when it was a major problem, but you still would like to see more quick decisions in the pocket, get rid of the ball, find a receiver, and make it happen. And unless he gets that solved, his career is going to stop.
And is it his 3rd coordinator in 3 years for Rosen?
Yep.
Yeah. So there is that. Okay. But that's still something where the Dolphins don't have any plans on just going, we're just going to go with 2 quarterbacks. Whoever wins the number 2 job is the number 2 guy. They still plan on having him on the team as the 3. And then if a team offers something they can't refuse, they'll go ahead and trade him.
It would have to be something really good, because with the whole COVID situation, do you really want to leave yourself with 2 quarterbacks?
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, if a team comes in and then dangles, let's say, a 3rd round pick at the Dolphins, I think they'd have a hard time.
Yeah, they won't be doing that.
I don't see that happening. Correct.
All right, the offensive line, boy, trying to figure this out. I don't even know where to start. So go ahead Austin Jackson, is he gonna win the left tackle job?
He is going to win the left tackle job.
Okay. Karras is also going to be the center, right?
Would appear that way.
Okay. And how's Jackson looked?
Again, before I go further talking about the offensive line, please note that those of us who are allowed to watch practice were restricted into what we can say and report in terms of who lined up with which.
Got it.
With which unit. So I kind of have to be vague while trying to be as honest as possible in answering these questions.
Well, then I'll leave that up to you then to tell me how you want to move ahead with that offensive line.
Sure. I would tell you that Austin Jackson has looked fine. I didn't notice anything from him that really dazzles you or that stands out in a bad way, which I guess for an offensive lineman is good. I would tell you that Eric Flowers has looked very good, and he's earned major kudos for working with the younger offensive linemen, working with them after practice, before practice, sort of mentoring them. And it's interesting that he got that from Brandon Scherf last year during his time in Washington, and that really helped him become a better pro and made him a better player. And maybe that played a part in his actually having a good season with Washington after 4 rather mediocre years with the Giants and the Jaguars. Of course, there's also the fact that he moved from tackle to guard, where maybe he's better suited. So he looks like a really solid acquisition. Karras hasn't stood out one way or the other. He looks like he'll be fine at center. The right side of the offensive line, Jesse Davis is going to be a factor one way or the other, whether it be a guard or a tackle. We'll see. We'll see exactly how they end up lining up against New England.
And then basically you have the battle with last year's 3rd round pick Dieter, and then the 2 rookies this year, Hunt and Kindley. Is that pretty much the battle? Those 3 guys that are in contention for that job, or one of the jobs.
Dieter's not going to be much a factor, it looks like.
Okay.
I have to imagine he'll make the team, because again, you don't want to give up on a 3rd round pick after one season, but I does not appear he'll have a major role on the offensive line.
Okay. Either way, though, I mean, if and look, no, we're not going to know obviously until games begin, but if, let's just say, if it's Flowers, Jackson, Karras, one of the rookies, and Davis, I'm thinking, it's looking a little bit better on paper than last year. So I'm feeling pretty optimistic that they're headed in the right direction. Again, it's all up to the rookies, though. No question.
Correct. And they're definitely headed in the right direction. Exactly how long it takes to get to that destination of where they want to be, which is a quality, dependable offensive line, who knows? Probably unrealistic to expect them to be great right off the bat. But how quickly that can happen, that it becomes a solid, dependable offensive line, could go a long way to determining what kind of season they can have.
Okay, let's go to defense. Oh, by the way, before we switch over to defense, how's Chan Gailey coming along from what you've seen? He hasn't been around for a few years, so he's kind of just doing his thing. Hey, like getting on a bicycle kind of deal. I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. Even though you always think about, especially the last few years, we've had all these hotshot young offensive coordinators that have gotten jobs, and it's about the new offenses and the young minds. And then here comes Chan Gailey getting a job. It's not even like Flores is a rookie coach. He was a rookie coach last year, so he's there's something that he feels comfortable there with a guy like Gailey.
No, I mean, it was certainly an interesting hire, considering you're talking about a guy who hadn't been in the NFL since 2016. The one thing that helps is he's got a lot of familiarity with Ryan Fitzpatrick, having worked together not only with the Jets, but with Buffalo early, was it 2010 through 2012. So that's certainly going to help. How it's going to play out, the thing we know from Chan Gailey's offense is traditionally they've had better success running the ball than they have had passing the ball. So what that means for the Dolphins in 2020 will be interesting to see. Maybe they'll be more run-oriented. But for that to happen, they have to have better play from the offensive line, because if it's going to be like it was last year, it's not going to work, because there just simply were no holes to be had.
All right, let's take a look at the defense, and a lot of new bodies on defense. Matter of fact, the top 3 of the top 4 paid free agents, including the top 3, definitely the top 2, Jones and Van Noy. They made the big money in free agency. Lawson and Ogba also come over on defense. And then last year, Christian Wilkins was a big pickup in the 1st round. And then you got some of the draft picks as well that are fighting for jobs. So how's it looking out there?
It's actually interesting that you mentioned several of the free agent acquisitions on defense. You mentioned 4 of them. And the one guy you didn't mention to me has clearly stood out as the most impressive player on defense in the practices. Go ahead.
Is Grugier Hill?
Nope, although he has looked good as well. It's another linebacker, Landon Roberts.
Oh, okay. And that would make sense.
Every practice you see him out there, and it's like, look, 44 making a play, 44 making a play, 44 right there. I mean, he has looked very, very impressive. I think the Dolphins knew what they were getting, but the way he has looked and the way Grugier Hill has looked, I'm sure played a part in the Dolphins' decision to move Raekwon McMillan basically for not a whole lot, considering all they got was swapping a 4 for a 5.
Yeah.
They felt comfortable that they had good depth there at linebacker.
So that's one of the things that you're going to see both of those guys equal type of reps, you believe, or does one guy start over the other?
If we're talking Roberts and Grugier Hill,
Yes.
based on what I've seen, Roberts deserves a lot of playing time because, like I said, he's looked. If he carries this into the regular season, yeah, he
Okay.
could be a difference maker on defense.
But still, you give up on a second round pick no matter what. That's a big disappointment. The kid just didn't work out.
Well, he's not good in coverage, and again, the thing with Brian Flores' defense is versatility, 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 being multiple and all that.
Yep.
And for that to work, you need your players to be able to do more than one thing. And Raekwon McMillan is good at stopping the run, but he's really not good in coverage, and that becomes a problem for somebody playing in Brian Flores' defense. I don't know exactly what the Raiders' scheme is on defense, but if they ask their inside linebackers to just plug against the run and then get off the field, then he could succeed with them.
Well, they better. And he's kind of, I guess you would then remind you of an old school middle linebacker. It's unfortunate, but that's not what we're playing anymore in the NFL.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, and as you mentioned, it's a second round pick that you're basically giving up on after 3 years. So it's not ideal.
Okay, let's go into that secondary. And there were just so many. Talk about changes. There were so many last year in that secondary. How's Byron Jones coming along? And what about the rookies as well? Because they're going to be they really have to be a big part of the secondary either this year or definitely in 2021.
Well, if you're talking about the two draft picks, Noah Igbenogany in the first round and Brandon Jones in the third,
Correct.
looks like the Dolphins hit on both of those. I could see Igbenogany playing a big role as a rookie in 2020. Brandon Jones also got a lot of potential. At the very least, he should play a lot of special teams right away. So those two guys will be big factors. Now, the question for the Dolphins secondary, you mentioned Byron Jones. Truth is, he hasn't really dazzled in the practices that we saw, but I'm not sure I would worry about it too much as a guy who's got a proven track record, but he better deliver considering the amount of money they gave him. So there is some pressure from that standpoint. The key to the secondary, as I see it, though, is going to be the play of the safeties, Eric Rowe and Bobby McCain, who are the projected starters. Eric Rowe was really good at safety last year after they moved him from cornerback, but McCain kind of had a struggle after moving in the offseason from cornerback. He played both boundary and in the slot,
Okay.
and then played safety last year for the first time and really didn't have a great season, and then wound up going on IR with a shoulder injury. So that's a key spot right there.
Okay. And by the way, Jones, there were people who believed that, because the Cowboys played a zone and the Dolphins played press coverage, that I guess that could either be a good thing or maybe a negative. So has that shown up at all? Have you noticed any of that, or is it it's practice? Like you just said, I'm not going to take too much into what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I don't tend to get overly worked up about what's going on in practice unless you see a pattern or somebody looking really, really poor or looking really, really good. As I mentioned, Landon Roberts, I wouldn't just bring him up if he was making a play here or there. The guy just constantly showing up. At some point, you have to think it means something.
Yes.
As far as Byron Jones, if you were to grade his practices, the ones that have been open to the media, he probably wouldn't be getting a high grade, but you have to fall back on the proven track record.
Now he has the one knock on him has been no interceptions in the last 2 years, and if you're going to get paid that much money from your corner, you do want to see some turnovers, especially if you're going to be playing a different scheme, which is a press scheme, which is definitely a part of creating turnovers as opposed to just sitting back, reacting, and so forth. So that's what they're going to be looking for out of Jones. And what about turnovers for the defense overall? Is there a guy that you can pinpoint somewhere and say, yeah, that guy could be our best takeaway guy on defense?
Well, that would be Xavier Howard, who's coming back. He just recently got activated from both the COVID list and PUP.
Okay.
after starting there because he had knee surgery in last December. Tied for the NFL lead in interceptions in 2018 when he made the Pro Bowl for the first time. Was also really, really good in 2017. Last year, not so much even before the knee injury. But he's a guy who's got loads of ability, and if he plays up to his potential, he's a guy who could get you some turnovers. The thing is, a lot of the turnovers for a lot of teams begin with the
That's
pass
right.
rush and rushing the quarterback, and that's a big question mark for this team. We know they added Lawson and Agba, as you mentioned, but there's nobody on this roster with a very high sack total for any season. I mean, Cal Van Noy last year had 6.5 sacks. I believe that's the highest total of any returning or any player on the Dolphin roster this year, and that's not necessarily a ton either. So that's going to be a big question mark on defense is who can create that pass rush. Yeah, and even if you don't get the sack, hurry the quarterback, force him into a
Yeah.
turnover.
Yeah, the Dolphins have one of the things you have to do in the next year or two is develop that guy that every opposing offense targets every week. Hey, we got to stop that guy. Dolphins don't have that guy yet, but that's the whole process of bringing in new players, developing them. And Howard, hasn't he been a kind of? I mean, he's kind of an enigma, isn't he? I mean, he's got some personal issues. He's got the injuries. It's just never just seems to be an easy season to count on him if you're a Dolphin fan.
Well, yeah, last year it kind of went downhill a little bit, but the years before that there was no issue. Well, the one thing he's had knee issues since he joined the Dolphins. Actually started his rookie training camp in 2016. Then in 2017 and 18, he was able to build up to the start of the regular season and performed really, really well, as I mentioned. And last year, he had an off-the-field incident that has been cleared up, I might add.
Okay.
And then he had a really, really rough season. And last year is tough to put a gauge on because of what the Dolphins did in the offseason when they got rid of so many high-profile players and really reset their roster to set themselves up for long-term success. And it's hard to say how that affected players. I know that like Howard had a really bad game against Dallas, and there were some bad looks where he was shown in coverage against Amari Cooper, getting beaten on a double move and kind of jogging to try to catch up. Was not a good look. And he'd probably be the first to tell you he did not play well last year. And then he got hurt, landed on IR after the game where he had his only interception of the season. But if he plays up to his potential, he's a Pro Bowl caliber player.
Yeah, and I mean that's why if everything goes well, Howard and Jones at corner, Rowe at one safety spot. That means that second safety spot, that's the one area that needs to be upgraded the most, correct?
No question.
Okay.
And under that scenario, you could see Igbenogany getting a lot of time at the slot position. And certainly there'll be a lot of times when the Dolphins are going to play 6 DBs. There'll be times when the Dolphins are going to play 7 DBs. So, but they do have a lot of young quality cornerbacks. The question is, where do they stand on safeties?
All right, at special teams, how's it looking so far? They were kind of average, below average last year. They did use up one of their draft picks on a long snapper. They've got Grant in the return game. Overall, though, it can be better, correct?
Well, absolutely. And one of the things they did in the offseason is they signed a couple of guys in free agency who are quote unquote special team specialists. Clayton Fedulem from formerly the Cincinnati Bengals. Yep. We mentioned Grugier Hill, who not only plays linebacker, is a very good special teams player. Kayvon Frazier came over from Dallas, is also a very good special teams player. So the hope is that those guys can make a difference on special teams, along with maybe some of the draft picks, such as Brandon Jones, who we mentioned. Jason Sanders is a pretty good kicker. Probably missed more field goal attempts than he would have wanted to last year, but he was lights out as a rookie in 2018. Mac Hawk is a solid punter. And we have Jakeem Grant likely as the kickoff returner if he does make the team. Now the Dolphins look like they are maybe willing to use Preston Williams as the punt returner again, where he really showed some nice promise there in that role last year, though unfortunately it was on a punt return where he suffered the torn ACL that ended his season in November. So
Yeah, I wouldn't put him back there if I was the Dolphins because he's talented. I don't think that was a fluke, what we saw last year.
no, and based on what we've seen in this summer, no, it's not a fluke.
No.
I can tell you there are a few times where he was matched up with Byron Jones and he beat him cleanly on a
Yeah.
route.
All you got to do is just take some time, look at the tape of what he did at Colorado State his final year. And when you look at the tape, you're going to go, how is this guy not drafted? I mean, with his size, I'm sure I haven't even looked at it. But I'm sure he didn't run a fast 40. You know how that goes. But and I get it. The percentages say if you're not the speediest guy, but boy, I mean, he was a transfer from Tennessee. If I don't,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, there were off the field issues. That's why he didn't get drafted.
that was the major reason. Yeah.
Yeah, but because the thing is, no, he does not have great straight ahead speed, but he's got fabulous body control. He can adjust to a pass in the air like really, really well, and then beat the defender one-on-one on contested balls because of that.
Okay, so before I let you go, and I know it's kind of different a little bit, even though you said it's kind of the same. Just hey, it's practice, and once you start getting the swing of it, it is what it is. How's the feel in year 2 compared to year 1?
Everything's just so weird because of COVID.
Yeah.
It's just that's changed everything. I mean, in terms of what they have, I think there's a feeling that they're building something that could be really good before too long, but there's a lot of uncertainty because there are so many new faces, and because of all of the extenuating circumstances related to COVID, which has made this like such a unique experience for everybody. So um, they're like kind of focusing on their own little world and trying to get ready day by day for the start of the regular season.
Are there any a couple more questions before I let you go? Are there any rookies, later round, mid round, free agents that we need to keep an eye on that you might have caught your eye and said this guy has a chance to make the team, or he has a chance to be a contributor this year?
This is where I need my roster around me because there's so
I'll
many
throw some
players
names at you because definitely
Go
the
right
team.
ahead.
Yeah, you've got talk about either Strobridge or Curtis Weaver. Who's looked better, if you can?
Oh, Curtis Weaver. Curtis Weaver is gone. The big drama around Dolphin camp last week with Curtis.
Oh, really?
Weaver.
I didn't even know that. What happened?
Yeah, well, he missed a few days of practice, and then Dolphins waived him injured, and then there was this big confusion as to couldn't the Dolphins have sent him straight to IR, which it turns out they could have sent him straight to IR with an injury deemed major. But the Dolphins obviously didn't think enough of him to do that. They just waived him injured, and the Cleveland Browns wound up putting in a claim for him. And the very next day, they put him on injured reserve with I believe it's some kind of foot or toe injury. And the thing is, with Curtis Weaver, they took a flyer on him in the 5th round after he had that incredible production at Boise State, despite not looking the part. And I zoomed in on him a couple of times in practice, and it was like, ooh, we know he does not look the part. And then you watch the snap, and the play starts, and he's rushing the passer, and if the offensive lineman gets his hands on him, it's over.
Yeah.
No, I didn't see a whole lot of separation skill. I didn't see a whole lot of explosiveness off the line of scrimmage. And I know some Dolphin fans were like up in arms about giving up on a 5th round pick and watch him become a star in Cleveland. And I'm thinking,
yeah, I don't think so.
No, a lot more likely to be out of the league in 2 years than be a starter getting significant snaps. As far as Justin Strobridge, yeah, he's going to play a lot, and he's going to have a big role in that defensive line because he's a big body up front.
Okay.
And he's got a little bit of pass rushing ability. He's not necessarily a pure pass rusher, but he can do a little bit of that, and he's stout against the run. So I would expect Jason Strobridge to play a lot of snaps as a rookie.
What about Benito Jones? We talked about him as a kind of like one of those top free agents that didn't get drafted.
Yeah, he hasn't looked bad. And then we got my daughter here showing up in the background.
Yeah, she don't care.
Yeah. He actually looks fairly solid in some of the practices. And you want to talk about looking the part. He looks the part. I mean, He's short and wide, which is kind of ideal if you're going to play the middle of the defensive line. The problem he's going to run into is fighting the numbers on the Dolphin defensive line as far as making the roster. It wouldn't be the weirdest thing in the world if he made it. I think he's going to have a tough time because of that.
Okay, and as far as Brian Flores, last question. What does he need to do better as a head coach? Whether it's game day, you tell me. Is there something that you've noticed that, that's the one thing that he has to do, and it's just time. Time will experience, and hopefully he'll get there.
Sure. I think what I would tell you is if there's one thing that has struck me from his first, year and 4 months, year and 5 months on the job, the one big strike on his record is the situation with Micah Fitzpatrick, because however you slice it, giving up on a first round pick after 1 year when you have him under contractual control for the next 4 years, and he's a guy with clear and obvious ability. It's not a great way of doing business. That's not how you wind up winning championships. So there had to be some middle ground there that it could have been reached in terms of resolving a situation where basically they had a difference of opinion as to how Fitzpatrick should have been used. Fitzpatrick resisted. Brian Flores basically, I guess, wound up with a maybe something along the lines of "it's my way or the highway," something along those lines. We don't know all of the exact details. Bleacher Report had a long story suggesting that maybe before the 2019 opener, Fitzpatrick had been working at one position at strong safety the entire week, and was thrown into free safety with a whole bunch of new people on game day against Baltimore, and it was a complete fiasco. The defense gave up more than 600 yards that day, so obviously it didn't work out. But the bottom line is you can't get rid of good players. You got to make it work. And now, obviously, if you're dealing with guys who are cancers, that's a different thing. But Fitzpatrick never had that reputation in Alabama. The people in Pittsburgh absolutely love him. So this was just an issue with Brian Flores. And
so you think it might have been an ego thing that he'll eventually understand. There's certain times you have to let that go.
Yeah, and I'm not taking sides as
to I understand
is wrong and who is right. But again, getting rid of bad players because you can't get along you can't get on the same page with them is not a great way of doing business.
And does that mean that Flores is the one that's in control? He's the one that says who's going, who's staying, compared to Chris Greer?
It's collaborative, but in this particular case, I think Minka told Flores, or get me out of here. I don't want to play here. And the team decision was made that okay, let's try to see what we can get for him. But either way doesn't look good. Now, Minka Fitzpatrick wouldn't have had 8 takeaways overall between fumble recoveries and interceptions that he played for the Dolphins last year, and he wouldn't have been an All-Pro based on the way the defense worked. But he was a foundational piece for the defense moving forward, and now what you got is a first-round pick.
Yeah, Steelers are real happy about it. That's for sure.
Oh, they're ecstatic.
Yeah. And that's something that could continue to come back to haunt them. But hey, you know what? Everybody makes mistakes, especially early on as a head coach. The whole idea is experience, and you got to just learn from it. So, look, I think, and there's no question, the Dolphins, this is an organization that I was talking earlier with Jay Morrison from The Athletic on the Bengals, and I would, the Dolphins and Bengal fans are in the same boat, I would think. I mean, I understand the Bengal fans look, Burrow is going to start day one, but Tua will be there before too long. They've both got young coaching staffs, and there's a whole lot to be excited about. Those two teams might be the two teams that might have the brightest futures in the entire AFC.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And here's the other thing about Flores, because I don't want to make I spent a little bit of time on that. The bottom line is he squeezed out 5 wins last year out of a team that, based on pure talent and the personnel, should have won maybe 1 or 2. So obviously he can coach. There's no question about it. But you were asking
Yeah,
me like,
what was the one thing
in what
that,
areas
yeah,
can he improve?
that's the reason I asked you like that, because it was like, we understand he did such a great job, but there's always something that you're not, that you have to get better at. That's why I even prefaced the question like that, because he did such a great job last year.
Absolutely, no question about
All
it.
right, Alan.
Now, one
Sure.
last thing. Now the challenge is to take. Let's say last year the town was, let's say, grade F town,
Yeah.
and he got it to 511. What does he do? Let's say the town level now is maybe a
Yep.
C. What does he do with that town? Can he elevate it the same way he elevated the town he had last year? That's going to be the
And then, of
challenge.
course, Tua is going to get in there at some point. I think that's pretty much a given, as long as he's not completely overwhelmed, which I don't think that's going to be the case. So it's going to be fun to again, no, with Tua coming in there, and the fans not having a quarterback to get behind like this since Dan Marino. It's an exciting time to be a Dolphin fan.
Correct, but it's also going to be a lot of pressure on the kid when he comes in, because they're expecting Hall of Famer pretty much.
Yeah, trying to compare him to what Marino did early on in his career is, I think, because the gap is so long, that you're not gonna have to worry too much about who were the fans that were there when Dan Marino was a rookie. Those guys are a little old, and I think they're a little bit more forgiving than the young crowd.
We'll find out.
Yeah, right. Then again, they are the season ticket holders and the sponsors and all that. So yeah, that's but all right. Anyway,
This might actually be a case where it's a good thing that there won't be too many people in
yeah,
the
well,
stands.
we'll see. I mean, we
Yeah,
all hold out hope by mid-season or a little bit later that we'll start to get some fans in the stadiums. I can't look. I just can't imagine there's no fans at the Super Bowl. I just can't. I'm not visually saying that.
that would be rather alarming, because it would mean that this COVID
Yeah.
situation is really still taking a major hold. So yeah, that would not be good.
Alan, I appreciate it. We'll look to get you on some of our other shows as well. We got the Jet Show every week, so when the Jets play the Dolphins, and we're also going to do a New England show this year with Evan Lazar, who covers the Patriots. So maybe we'll get you on if we get an opportunity to hook up with you in the next couple of weeks, because that's week one. The Dolphins get a crack at the Patriots without Tom Brady. They're the first team that gets to find out what it's all like with Cam Newton running the show. That should be a lot of fun too.
Absolutely. Yep. Looking forward
Thanks,
to it.
Alan. We'll talk to you soon.
You got it, Greg. My pleasure. Anytime.